So for a moment, I'd like you to take out your bulletin and look at the cover. And how many of you see a rabbit? How many of you see a duck? How many of you see an elephant? I'm just kidding on that one. How many of you did not see a rabbit until I said rabbit? And how many of you did not see a duck until I said duck? Well, this rabbit-duck optical illusion was used by Thomas Kuhn, who was a physicist and philosopher, to illustrate the meaning of a paradigm shift. And a paradigm shift happens when there's a fundamental change or transformation of how we see something. And such a shift happens when we come to see something in a totally new way, either good or bad. History is full of examples of paradigm shifts. How about in the 300s when the Roman Emperor Constantine legalized Christianity? Christian persecution and oppression suddenly ended, and Christianity spread like dandelion seeds in the wind. How about Copernicus in the 1500s, who came up with the radical idea that the sun, not the earth, is at the center of the universe? This unleashed the realization that human beings are not the center of it after all. So much for being egocentric. How about Darwin and his idea of natural selection that caused upheaval in the halls of universities and cathedrals? Or 1945, when the U.S. annihilated 129,000 people in an instant with 2 bombs. The nuclear age was a paradigm shift that changed everything, including our sense of safety and security. Yes, history is replete with examples of events that fundamentally changed or shifted the way we see things, and my hunch is that all of us here today, if we think about our own lives, there have been moments or passages or instances in which we became a different person than we were before that time. I, for example, understood the full meaning of what it means to be vulnerable only as a result of being present for the birth of our 3 children. I've never been the same since. And Easter moves from being a nice idea to a life game-changing truth only after you start losing people you love. Yes, sometimes things happen that change everything, and the way things were before will never be that way again. Now, you and I are here this morning, presumably because we want to know more deeply, or simply curious about the penultimate paradigm shifter. His name was Jesus. His name is Jesus. And he not only turned everything on its head, but continues to fundamentally change each of us from the inside out. When we come to know Jesus, either suddenly or over the course of years, we no longer remain the center of our own universe. He does. And when that happens, we know we will never be the way we were before. The more and more each day we let Christ into our lives, the more and more we shift and change and see things from a totally new perspective. In just a few short years, Jesus created a seismic shift in how we see ourselves, others, and God, and some of this paradigm shift happened because of what Jesus said and taught. And if you and I really pay attention and live by what Jesus said, we are different than we were before we heard those words. Listen to just a snippet of some of Jesus' game-changing words. Wherever your treasure is, there the desires of your heart will also be. The standard you use in judging another person is the standard by which you will be judged. Why worry about a speck in your friend's eye when you have a log in your own? You can tell who a person is not by what they say, but by their actions and behavior. This one's a little scary. What sorrow awaits you, religious teachers? Outwardly, you look fine, but beneath the skin, you are total frauds. Scour your insides, and then the gleaming surface will mean something. A kingdom divided will collapse. And as Jesus hung on the cross, I forgive all of you. Paradigm-shifting words that will change our lives. But Jesus caused a shift in how we see ourselves, God, and others, not by just what he said, but by what he did. A snippet. He calmed the waters of a lake in a raging storm. He brought a dead little girl back to life. He did the same for a close friend of his. He fed thousands of people with just a very little bit of food. He healed people with seemingly incurable conditions and mental conditions and physical conditions. He turned water into wine, pulled a coin out of the mouth of a fish. And he continually asked outcasts, the unaccomplished, the despised, the confused, the lost, the heartbroken, and all those who could not get their lives together to follow him and to accept his love and forgiveness. And when you and I come to embrace and internalize the power of God and realize that the same power that Jesus used in his miracles is the same power of God that is within us, everything changes and we are never the same. And then, of course, the magnum opus paradigm-shifting event. Jesus rose from the dead and interacted with well over 500 people over a 40-day period. People then and people who now tune into that truth and live by it will never be the same because of it. You've heard me say many times we are Easter people in a Good Friday world. But on top of all this and so much more, there's something else that Jesus did. He gave us a life-altering way to relate to God along with a new motive that can drive all we do and say if we choose to accept this motive. And this life-altering way of relating to God and a new motive behind our words and actions will cause a paradigm shift in our lives and will change us if we choose to embrace and live by it. More on that motive in a moment. Our reading today is from the Gospel of Matthew. In the Gospel of Matthew, we know that there are 5 major discourses, the first one being the Sermon on the Mount. These words are taken from the Sermon on the Mount. And Jesus in our reading starts off by talking about salt. Now we know that salt is necessary to life. Despite what my cardiologist says, I like to add it to food because it enhances flavor. Salt does certainly enhance flavor, brings out flavors, makes things taste better, doesn't it? And here Jesus says to his followers, be like salt. Go enhance things. Make things better. Do good things. One person writes about these verses, to have salt but not to use it, to have a shaker of salt next to the stove but never to put it in the pot is foolish. What's the sense of having salt if you're not going to use it? You might as well toss it out the window. Jesus is basically saying we exist to mix it up in the world and do our savory task of making the world a better place. Immediately he shifts to an image of a lamp. He says, no one lights a lamp and then hides it away. You bring the light out so that everybody can benefit from the light. You don't hide it away or stick it under a bushel. You bring it out so that people can see. So Jesus says, be like light. Show people the way. Do good things. Be a benefit to people around you. Be that light. Don't hide it away. And through the images of salt and a lamp, Jesus is telling his followers to use what they've been given by God to go out and make things better by doing good things. Get engaged, get involved, make a difference, is his message. But then something interesting happens, doesn't it? The reading seemingly takes a toothy twist. Jesus turns from encouraging people to do good, seemingly to threaten people if they don't do good things perfectly. And here's what Jesus said in paraphrased form. There are 613 laws in Scripture. I didn't come to get rid of them. I've come to fulfill them all. And by the way, if you don't do all those laws perfectly, even better than those who study them all and try and live by them every day, you're doomed. You're done. You need to be better than even the most religious person around. If you're not going to be part of my kingdom. Wow. Do good things and do them perfectly? Keep all 613 laws? Is that what he meant? I love how this one person comments. Imagine a 5-year-old learning to play piano. Twinkle, twinkle, little star. And in the middle of the child stumbling through the notes, the piano teacher interrupts and said, "Stop and now play this Beethoven piece. If you can't, you'll never be able to play the piano. I won't teach you, and neither will anyone else. You are a useless piano player." Really? Not only would such a scenario be ridiculous, it would be impossible for the child to accomplish. And Jesus is doing the precise exact same thing in this teaching. He says, unless you can do everything right and with perfection, God won't want anything to do with you. Yet it's impossible for you to do everything right. So what's the point? Well, on the one hand, Jesus is saying, do what's right and good and get out in the world and make a difference like salt and light. On the other hand, he says, unless you do it perfectly, God's not going to be happy with us. In other words, no matter what we do or how much we do or how much we get it right, unless it's all done with perfection, we are totally out of luck. And by the way, perfection's impossible. That's the point. Said another way, Jesus is saying here, do good things, do very good things. Be salt, be light. But remember, doing good things is not what makes you right with God. Do good things, but remember, actions, however wonderful, do not make you right with God. Only God makes you right with God. Getting it right 100% of the time is not possible, and it's not what God is looking for anyway. God is looking for us to understand that we don't have to get it right because He is what makes it right between us. Do good things, but remember, doing it right all the time is not what we're to strive for, okay? Is there something else going on here? I think so. You see, I think these verses are an invitation from Jesus for you and for me to ask ourselves before we speak and before we act, what's my motive here? What's my motive for saying what I'm about to say? What's my motive for doing what I'm about to do? Why am I doing this good thing? So there are lots of motives in life, aren't there? I mean, there are as many motives as there are actions. Many people work. And people work in part to provide, to make a living. The motive is income. That's a good thing. That's a perfectly healthy motive. Many people practice a skill over and over and over and over and over again. They want to get better at playing the piano. That's a good thing. That's a healthy motive. A lot of people get involved in local politics because they want to make a difference in their little town or village. They want to make a difference or make a positive change. That's a good thing too. Many people go to the gym because they want to get into shape. They want to take care of their health. That's a good motive. A lot of people travel. Why? Because they want to see things. They want to have fun. They want to open up perspectives. All good motives. But I believe that through these verses, Jesus is encouraging you and me to choose one motive above all others in our day in and day out living. I believe that Jesus calls us to do what we do and to say what we say, to respond to something rather than to get something. All of us here today fall short. We all make mistakes, at least I do, every day. We're all imperfect, at least I am. Nobody gets it right all the time. But God says, I love you anyway. I love you anyway. We all do things we wish we had not done. We all mismanage relationships on occasion. None of us is virtuous all the time, but God says, I forgive you anyway. You and I are right with God not because of what we do or don't do. We are right with God because of Jesus. And that's called grace. And we cannot earn grace by what we do, no matter how much we do or how much good we do. And we cannot lose grace by what we don't do or even how bad it is. We can't get it right with God. We don't have to, because we're right with God because of Jesus. Everybody. And no, that's not fair. Therefore, Jesus says, do what you do in life. Act the way you do in life. Say what you say in life. Make your primary motivant to do everything as a response to the love and forgiveness of God. Don't do things to try and earn God's love and forgiveness. Be salt, be light, be salt, be light, because you know you are loved and forgiven by God. Be salt, be light as a response to the love and forgiveness of God. Be salt, be light in response to God's grace. This is all about a paradigm shift. A shift in our fundamental motive and why we do and say the things we do. What if all of us, this is an impossible thing, but what if all of us, every morning woke up, instead of first asking, what am I going to get today? What if our first question was, how am I going to respond to the love and forgiveness of Jesus today by what I say and what I do? What if when engaging with other people, we didn't first think, what can I get? But rather, how can I respond to God's love in my life through how I interact with the person that is right in front of me? If we choose to make responding to the love of God our primary motive in what we say and do, everything changes. Change how we see ourselves, how we interact with others, how we see God. Just imagine how things would be if more and more of us every morning got up and said, how can I respond today to the love and forgiveness of Christ? Let me put all this very simply. Jesus wants you and me to ask continually, what's my ultimate motive? What's my motive? Is it me? Or is it the love and forgiveness of Jesus? What's my motive? Is it me? Or is it God? I'm about to say something. Why? Is it me? Or is it God? I'm about to do something. Is it me? Or is it a response to God? How we answer that question, what a paradigm shift. A powerful paradigm shift. Much, much more powerful than a silly illustration of a duck or a rabbit. Me or God? Let us pray.